Hey everyone, I want to do a follow-up video today about the last one, with regards to the last one I did, where I spoke about the very unhealthy type 4. And you can look at that video first. And usually the question that people ask is, what can I do to get out of it? How do I get there? Because there is no real easy answer. It's going to be different for everyone, and ultimately it's a process. What I have found is that it's something you have to want. You have to want to get out of it. If you are not willing to help yourself and you want to remain stuck there, you will remain stuck. It's sort of like when you think of the type 6. If you look for problems enough, those problems will happen. They'll manifest on their own if you keep looking for them. It's the same thing in this situation. If you're not willing to take steps to improve yourself, you won't. So what the reason it's so difficult when the 4 gets in this really unhealthy phase, these really unhealthy levels, and I'm talking like not even level 7, I'm talking about level 8 and 9, with this like suicide, this self-hatred, this loathing, this sitting around kind of waiting for a rescuer. But then very often what happens is when somebody maybe tries to help them, they turn it away. So it's again, it comes down to this whole idea of the suffering becomes my identity, because at least this is the perspective of the unhealthy 4. Feels like I haven't done anything, I haven't achieved anything, I haven't actualized myself. So the only thing I have is this suffering, this misery, and this defines me. And this is where the crux of the kind of the type 4. Will you stop that, Dolce? Stop that. That's my cat. She likes to claw. This is why I have wires here, because she would claw the screens. Anyway, sorry. What was I saying? So this goes back to the type 4 and how the 4 is defined by their feelings, their moods. They use that as their identity very often, except when they start to integrate. Okay, so they're at these unhealthy levels, and this is the perspective of the 4. They might have achieved a lot of great things. Maybe they're a great painter, maybe they've achieved great writing. A lot of great writers were 4s, and they ended up killing themselves, not because they necessarily didn't achieve anything great. They did, but from their perspective, from their emotional perspective, they don't feel like they've done enough. They don't feel like they're worthy enough. They feel like the world is too painful. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So if you're not willing to take steps to help yourself, it's not going to get better. You have to actually want to make those changes. And one of the points I made is that you can't gain confidence in life without mastering something practical. I mean, a lot of confidence and self-esteem resides in the practical. And it sounds weird in some ways, but there's a lot of values and lessons to be learned in the conventional. And part of the 4's integration is recognizing beauty in the ordinary. Now, Thomas Merton is a well-known 4. I mean, I've read a lot of his books, probably over 20 of his books, and I talk about him in some other videos. I read him because I was writing about some religious themes, and I didn't know the Enneagram, and I say, why do I feel this connection with this monk? It's really strange, because it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I agree. It was like, it was really intense in how much what he was saying resonated with me personally. And he's a 4-wing 5. And there's one part in one of his books, and I can't tell you which one, but he talks about how there is beauty in the ordinary. And it's like that's the 4's kind of coming to realize. I mean, that's not something the 4, I think, naturally believes. It takes work to believe that. Just like it takes work to be happy, it takes work to believe that there's beauty in the ordinary. Just like the type 1, with everything needing to be perfect, when they realize they've come to a level of integration, they don't need to nitpick, because they come to realize things are perfect as they are. And I sit out here because I like to feel closer to nature. I like the trees. It just gives me a feeling of peace. But it's not perfect. Hey, this wall probably needs to be painted. You know, it's not aesthetically perfect. I know that. But it's like, hey, that's life. So where was I going with this? Helping yourself. What are some things that I've done? Now, I get very, very, I go through Monday depressions. When it's Monday and I have to go back to work, and it's like, I sit there and think, the weekend will never come again, and I'm going to be eternally stuck doing this mundane, rote crap, and just the whole idea of returning to the world and having to shut off my imagination and my fantasy. And essentially, you know, when you go into work, I feel like you have to kind of put on a persona, you know, and it's just like, and there are some Mondays I am so down. Like, I will say the saddest part of my day or week is really like, not even Sunday night, but it's, some people get sad on Sunday night, but it's Monday morning at like, you know, 4 a.m. or something. It's like, you know, 3 or 4 a.m. It's Sunday into Monday, and I get up to go to the bathroom, and I'm going, oh, in a few hours I'm gonna have to get up and go to work. And it is the worst part of my week. And I swear, it's like, what I've done to try to deal with this. I mean, seriously, it could be a problem where I was like really depressed. On Mondays, sometimes I work a later shift, so I was able to go out and take a walk or run. Get out. Just not even do like my workouts online. Just get into my body, go for a walk. Just go for a several mile, you know, few mile walk, look at trees, listen to some music, and really just kind of get into that 9 zone, that peace kind of thing, just to help me. Usually then once I get to work, I feel a little better. Again, these are kind of functional things to do, but another thing for me is, you know, when I was going through major depression, like almost, you know, like a trauma, I was recovering from trauma, you know, form of trauma when I had engaged with this narcissist, interacted, and that's maybe, you know, a whole other video, and I've talked about it in other videos, just when he devalued me, and it was like I went from him mirroring an image of me that I liked, you know, like, oh, you know, valued my talent, to then just devaluing me, denigrating me in the sense that he wouldn't engage with it, he wouldn't read anything I wrote for like 4.5 years, and then just, that's another topic. It was all like his emotional kind of manipulations, and finally in having to just cut this toxic individual from my life, I was just so down and hollow and empty and so depressed from the aftermath of that. And because during that whole time I had felt I had gone to 2 a lot, I had, you know, I felt like I had done a lot for him, and I remember I'd be like, well, I've done all this for you, and you don't even appreciate it, and so that was like very close to the 2 point when I was associated with him. And after that, after I went no contact, so like my first advice is that if you are around people or individuals who are just toxic like this, the first step is you got to cut this from your life. You know, you can't grow around this garbage. So you have got to take the action to get rid of that person or people or whatever. I started listening to these therapists online, and I'm going to put a link to her site. She's the last, I mentioned her in my last video. She talked about some aspects of borderline personality disorder. Her name's Chris Godinez, and I think she is great. She is just fun-loving, and I mean, I don't know what her type is. I don't even know if she's necessarily probably not even into the Enneagram, but if I had to guess, she has a very 7, wing 8 vibe. She's very type 7, and she talks about how she had an abusive father, so she had a period in her life where she was suicidal, and what she did to combat that depression was she turned to humor. For her, Robin Williams and Monty Python were saving graces for her, and I found that just fascinating. And that's so typical of a type 7, that they will turn to humor and joy as a form of comfort. That's different than the 4, who usually will turn to a kind of melancholy as a form of comfort, which a lot of people don't understand. And melancholy is a good sadness. It's a good sadness. It's the kind of sadness you feel after watching a movie that makes you cry, but it makes you realize the depth and importance of life, and that things go beyond just the trivial. And that's sort of like this comforting feeling, and that's a good sadness. That's what, it's not trauma. It's not being at level 8 here, wanting to die. I mean, that is not the same thing. So, partly still from this book, I'm just going to mention, so like the direction of integration, 4 goes to 1. Healthy 4s actualize themselves. So they become objective. They learn how to separate their emotion from objective reality. They learn that their emotions don't define them, that they are in fact individuals in their own nature, you know, that is not, they're not so dependent now on others confirming that. And that's where, when you go to 2, is when 4s are stressed and they go to 2, they're looking for others to give them back that identity they want. So they want compliments, tell me I'm good, reassure me, a lot of attention seeking, because they're not finding it in them. And so like when I was undergoing that kind of stress, that's what I was doing. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling because it wears people out. People don't want to be sitting there feeding you compliments, and they see you're miserable and they offer to help. And if you don't help yourself, you can't blame them for wanting to move on and walk off, you know? And at that point, the 4 is almost like, you know, paranoid and freaking out that this person's going to abandon them. But the reason it happens is because the 4 hasn't done anything to actually help themselves. You know, it's like when they get to that unhealthy level, getting a job, going to a therapist becomes out of the question. But if you are unhealthy, and regardless of what type you are, and you feel yourself in those unhealthy levels, I really do recommend, if you can't get yourself to a therapist because it's just, you just can't do it, okay? Listen to some videos on YouTube, really and truly. I'm gonna link to this therapist that I've listened to since 2016, and she has a show every Sunday at noon Mountain Time, and it's 2 o'clock my time. I believe it's 2 o'clock. Anyway, I don't know time zones. You will see it. So she does her We Need to Talk show, and she'll talk about, like, she talks about different personality disorders. She'll talk about trauma, recovery, and it's a lot of focus on self-esteem building, self-confidence building, how to deal with someone when they're condescending to you. And these are all just little lessons because it doesn't go away. And I love it because she curses. She's so authentic. And I totally recommend listening to her shows and her videos. So I'm going to link to her. And this is a great way to get yourself out of that, you know, that emotional funk where you can't quite get yourself to a therapist. You can't bring yourself to talk about it. But you just want to absorb and you want to listen. And this really helped me. And when you start to listen, and this person is helping to clarify, you start to lean on that 5 wing, and you start to be more objective. And then you start to lean on your 3 wing, and you're like, you know what, I do want to accomplish some things. I'm going to get some stuff done. And, you know, as I said, for me, going to that 3 wing is, even though I do have a strong 3 wing, going to the 3 wing in the real world, like just the job stuff and the resume, I hate that. I hate that stuff. And to me, in you know, job interviews, and it feels so fake. But it's like I sit there and I go, get it done, and then I'll be better. Get it done. So another point I want to make, don't want to make this video too long, but I was talking with a type 9, and so as you know the 2 types that struggle most with identity, the 2 types that are identity types are 4 and 9, okay? Now the difference is, 4s will withdraw to maintain their identity. 9s feel when they're too withdrawn and they're not around people that they're sort of losing their identity. The core fear or weakness or whatever you want to say of the 9 is that deep down they feel like they're not important. They really have to tell themselves, you matter, you're important. Because deep down they always think someone else, maybe someone else's opinion matters more, maybe they're not as significant as others. The difference is with the 4, is see, I always knew I was important and mattered. But let me follow this up. My problem was, as a 4, not that I don't feel like I have something to say, something to contribute, and that I matter. It's, why don't others recognize that I matter, that I have something to contribute, that I have something about me? There's that, exceptional, this whole specialness, the whole, like, there's something about me. Why don't others see it? And that's the difference, is that's where, when I sit there and say, why don't others see it, that's me going to the 2 point right there, like relying too much on others. I want others to see what I am so they can reflect back to me what I want to be, because I don't feel it within. When I'm at 1, actualized, when I'm at 1, more objective, I don't need others to reflect back to me who I am, because I know who I am. And it says here in the book that 4s, it says here that 4s, well, they don't feel the need to constantly stand out. Like in Richard Rohr's talk on type 4, he says a 4 can then, when they're at 1, they can sit in a white t-shirt and, I don't know why he says white t-shirt, but I guess he has this image that all 4s wear black, but clearly that's not true. I love black, but I like color. That you can sit among others and not feel like you're being sort of blended in and forgotten, because you know yourself. And so that's one of the, I just found that very interesting. So it's just underneath me. That's why I'm a writer. I always knew I had things to say. I knew what I said. I'm like, no, I do matter, but why don't others see that I matter? And so, like, my self-doubts when I say that I wonder, who am I, good enough, or have I done enough, because 7s don't question this, more assertive types, or, not 3s question that, but it really comes down to a confidence thing. And when I'm at 1, I'm more of a confidence thing going on, So another thing that can help you is, this is my last point, I don't want to make this too long. You're really in that funk. Going to 2, the high end of 2, is another way to help you. Calling someone up, meeting with a friend, somebody, asking them how they're doing. How's your life been? How have you been? How are you? Listening to someone else's point of view for a change, rather than your own. And this is one of the reasons I enjoy sometimes, I enjoy listening to YouTube videos, people who are talking like I am. Chris Cardenas, she shares a lot about her life, and she has another channel where she talks about, just things she's doing in everyday life. It makes me feel like I'm a guest in her house, like, I want to know what you're doing. Tell me what you're about. And that is the high end of 2. And you got to remember, as a 4, 4s love to rag on 2s, because they don't like 2s, sappiness and rainbows and cupcakes and all that crap. But it's a part of you. I mean, like it or not, the 2 is a part of you. So going to that high end of 2, using that 2 point to pull you out, can really lift you. Remember, others are struggling, might be also struggling. What can you do for them? Might make you realize, can help you learn about yourself. So those are just some ideas I have. I can talk more about this in time. I want to talk more about type 3 as well, and some habits of that. But just remember, the 4 and 9, their identity types, totally deal with it differently. 4s, you don't understand me. I'm going to withdraw. Nines are not, they withdraw, but they feel like they lose themselves without others reaffirming what they are. And that's like the total opposite of the 4. That's why I find it so fascinating. Anyway, those are some thoughts. I'll be in touch soon. Thank you for listening.